I've got 6 cups of the dry pinto beans that I have soaked overnight, and I've poured the water off from the soaking because that's supposed to make the beans less musical, and we cook them in fresh water. I've had the beans going on the fire here for about 15 minutes and they've come to a boil. Right now they're just boiling in plain water, and we're going to add some seasonings into them. The first thing I'm going to do is chop some onions up. The old chuck wagons could carry onions and potatoes and different root crops because they needed no refrigeration. Put about a softball size onion, and I like using sweet onion because they just taste good. They're not quite as strong as your yellow or white onions, but we'll just chop these up with kind of a medium to small chop. The thing about hauling beans in a chuck wagon is they could last just about forever. As long as you keep a dry bean dry, they have an indefinite shelf life, and about the only thing that really bothers them is if they get wet, and then they sprout. And unless you're making chop suey, you don't need sprouted beans, but that's another story. All right, there's a good batch of onions ready to add to the beans. When I add my onions in, I generally tend to maybe leave my top off for just a little bit to let kind of some of the sulfur gas out of them a little bit. It makes them a little less overwhelming. Plus, it's a good time to add your other ingredients. What the old-time chuck wagon cooks used an awful lot of was chili powder. Chili powder was available early on. It had a good flavor. It was inexpensive, which was important to the ranch owners. This is just a standard prepared chili powder mix, and I add about 2 heaping tablespoons of this chili powder here. And of course, we're using the precise chuck wagon measure. And the next thing we will add to that is a cup of crisp cooked bacon that I cooked earlier. You don't add your salt and pepper in your beans until they're cooked, because adding salt to the beans while they cook makes the skin tough. And as you can see, I'm going to add just a little bit of water to that to make sure there's enough to get them cooked. Back on with the lid, and we'll check them periodically, but we'll get them back to a boil. Once the beans hit a boil, they'll be cooked in about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on how much breeze I get and how much heat I lose over the day's cooking time. And the reason I like using the Bighorn Basin beans is they're nice and fresh, as a dry bean goes, and they cook up a little quicker than the ones you get in the market.
He wasn't just a cook. He was also a doctor, a veterinarian, a barber. He sewed on buttons. He listened to cowboys' woes. He gave advice. And he just did so many things to really make the contentment of a cattle drive.
We're back to our beans about 2 hours later. So let's give them a stir and see what they look like. As you can see, the beans have softened up some. They've started to thicken up the sauce in there and stuff. And these beans are ready to have a taste of after I salt and pepper them. You need about a tablespoon of salt. The black pepper will actually add as much or more heat as the chili powder. So you want to be careful adding this according to how spicy you like your beans.
I did, but he's passing out. They were good. I'd have you.
Yeah. Yeah.